Welcome back. Dramatic video of a father performing chest compressions on his 3-year-old son in a hospital bed with no medical staff in sight has gone viral. We wanted to know the full story of what led to the scene at Nemours Children's Hospital in Orlando.
Investigative reporter Darlene Jones has been researching the story, trying to talk to the hospital, independent medical and legal experts around the country, and she spoke exclusively with the family. Darlene, this started more than a year ago when that child nearly drowned in a pool.
Yes, and records we obtained through our persistent research confirming that he was first treated at 2 other hospitals before his family pushed to have him released on a ventilator, but he required someone trained to provide him with that health care 24/7. The video we are about to show you, we want to warn you, it is difficult to watch, but it was important for us to show you the history of how we got to that point of that video that has now gone viral and now raising questions about when and who should be able to decide when someone is declared brain dead.
Father desperate to keep his son's heart going, performing chest compressions for hours inside Nemours Children's Hospital before his heart finally stops.
I was so helpless. The only thing I could do was use my emotions and my words.
The family has no regrets about posting this intimate and heartbreaking moment that generated some outrage, but mostly sympathy from people around the world questioning why they sought no medical intervention.
We're going to work everything in our ability to save our son's life, and we were also going to make sure that we let the world know what was going on.
3-year-old Nayim Carter had been fighting to stay alive since last February when he nearly drowned. Records we obtained independently through public sources show 2 days after the accident, Advent Health doctors determined he was still non-responsive and completely dependent on a ventilator. Doctors said he suffered an anoxic brain injury, but chest x-rays showed no signs of aspiration, which is abnormal for a drowning victim, and there was no fluid in his lungs. All indications, though, according to a doctor, was that there was no brain activity and no brainstem function. In this email, a hospital spokesperson didn't answer specific questions and would only say the loss of a child is one of the most difficult things anyone will have to deal with, and our hearts go out to the family.
Them having that ability to make that type of decision, regardless of us as parents and as other humans, to act in that way, they shouldn't be able to do that. Regardless of them having a medical license, we're still human beings, and we all still have a constitutional right to life.
This same public record confirms mom refused to allow doctors to perform brain death tests for a full month, telling us her son needed more recovery time. When the test was done, this record shows he had very minimal brain activity, but in doctors' opinions, not enough to sustain life. The family told us they also refused what's known as an apnea test, which most doctors believe provides a sign of definitive loss of brainstem function. But the patient has to come off that ventilator, and it can cause cardiac arrest.
He was urinating on his own, defecating on his own. His heart was beating. The only issue he had because of the lung failure was it. That was it, so he had to have a ventilator.
9 Investigates could find no local doctor willing to speak with us on the record, so our research took us to Harvard University.
I think this is often very difficult for families because patients who are brain dead can look like other patients who we expect to survive. They need a ventilator to breathe. They're non-responsive. They appear to be unconscious, but other bodily functions do continue.
Harvard's medical school performed critical and controversial work in 1968 to define brain death, and every state, including Florida, uses it to define its Declaration of Brain Death Health Code.
There have been a number of legal challenges, and they continue. And indeed, there is discussion about whether the Uniform Determination of Death Act needs to be revised to address some of these concerns. One is whether patients actually can be considered to be dead based upon the loss of brain function when other functions may continue.
Nayim was released from Advent Health to home-based care where his parents converted this bedroom into a space suitable in their eyes for the 24/7 care he would require, decorated with selfies and all of his favorite cartoon characters.
Was he still communicating?
In ways, yes. He would also, like his dad was just explaining, he would respond to songs I was saying. His grandma would do exercising with him. He was like, okay, Nayim, let's count.
6 months ago, he developed pneumonia, and that's how he ended up here at Nemours, where he remained on that ventilator until for some reason his heart stopped, which is what led to this traumatic scene. His parents told us they had long complained about the care he was receiving. In a statement, Nemours wouldn't answer specific questions either, but told us in part, "Our hearts grieve with this family. We do everything possible for every patient in our care. Sadly, the outcome is sometimes not what we hope for. While we cannot comment on the particulars of this situation, we extend our deepest sympathies to the family."
I'm so proud of Nayim, of how hard he fought to the very end.
It is unclear who paid for Nayim's care initially, but we can tell you Medicaid and even most insurance companies stop paying for care, or can, once a patient is considered brain dead. The medical examiner listed his cause of death as complications of resuscitated drowning, but toxicology reports are still pending, which will show the family what was in Nayim's system. In the studio, Darlene Jones, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
The details surrounding the death of a toddler at an Orlando hospital have raised questions about what it means to be brain dead.
Yesterday, we brought you the story of the 3-year-old Nayim Carter, who fought for his life for more than a year after he nearly drowned in a pool. Heartbreaking video of the little boy's father performing chest compressions inside Nemours Hospital in Orlando went viral. He was taken there 6 months ago because he developed pneumonia, and last week his heart stopped. But right after the accident, doctors at Advent Health determined the child had very minimal brain activity. His parents refused additional brain death tests and took him home on a ventilator. Investigative reporter Darlene Jones found out declaring someone brain dead has been so controversial recently, there is work happening to determine whether the definition should be revised.
Christian, the question debated here is whether hospitals and its doctors should be allowed to declare a patient brain dead without considering spiritual beliefs or even other medical research that questions what it means to be alive.
Nayim Carter's mother recalls a happy and energetic boy who loved SpongeBob before he was found floating in this swimming pool last February, according to investigators. His mother told deputies she was ill that day and he was in the care of an adult family member.
The lock is big enough for any person or whatever to make a mistake and forget to lock the pool door.
The sheriff's office report explains doctors described Nayim as non-responsive a month later with very minimal brain activity and, in doctors' opinions, not enough to sustain life.
Nayim's organs and everything else was functioning. Nayim was making improvements.
Cases like this have made headlines across the country, sparked controversy, court fights, and even questions about the Uniform Determination of Death Act.
Some people believe that as long as other functions continue, the patient remains alive. There's objections about whether doctors need to have permission in order to do the testing.
The UDDA came after a Harvard Medical School report in 1968, which was reviewed in 2018. It provided an alternative way to define brain death based on testing because of the invention of the ventilator, which is what doctors believe kept Nayim alive for more than a year. Every state created statutes modeled after the act, which allows doctors to declare brain death if there's irreversible circulatory, respiratory, or brain function, including brainstem. New Jersey has a religious exemption, and Maryland considers the family's desires. Attorney Kevin Acevedo has represented families.
The question is, can a person object on the basis of their practicing a religion that a person, should not be declared brain dead, because they're entitled to believe that a person can only die and God can only take life when a heart stops or when the lungs stop functioning.
Doctors say that makes it difficult to explain to families patients who are brain dead and on a ventilator would eventually lose organ function without the ventilator because the brain is unable to trigger signals to the lung muscles to breathe. That's why they believe the apnea brain death test is critical because patients come off the ventilator to see if the body has spontaneous respiratory activity.
There's never been anyone who has been diagnosed as brain dead who has ever had any recovery of consciousness, despite reports that have appeared in the media.
In Florida, 2 independent doctors must diagnose a person as brain dead in order to come up with that prognosis. In some cases, if a family refuses, hospital ethics committees can get involved, and it really can get messy. These are rare cases, and that never happened in the Nayim Carter case. In the studio, Darlene Jones, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.